What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg with a look at the Microsoft Surface 3, which is now a smaller, cheaper variant of the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. Now this starts off at $499, same price as the iPad Air 2, and it seems to be directly targeting that market. Now for $499 we get a full Windows tablet. It runs a full version of Windows 8.1 and is upgradable to Windows 10 free of charge. This also includes a 1-year subscription to Office 365, which is about a $70 value. Now for $499 you get 64 gigs of storage and 2 gigs of RAM. For $100 more, you can get 120 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM. Both of these are Wi-Fi models. Also available is a 4G LTE variant of each of these, but unfortunately pricing is not yet available. Now to run a full version of Windows, we do have an Intel Atom processor, the X7 Z8700, clocked at 1.6 gigahertz. That's a quad core that boosts up to 2.4 gigahertz. All right, so let's take a look to see what you get when you purchase a Surface 3. So this is the box, very similar to the Surface Pro 3 box. Pretty nice presentation here. On the back we have our specs. So again, this is the baseline configuration, 64 gigs internal storage and 2 gigs of RAM. Packaging is similar on all of them. Of course, we have this little tab here to pull to release the sleeve here. So we should be able to just slide the sleeve off, and there it is. So front and center is the Surface 3 tablet. So let's pull this out for just a moment. Now we're going to take a close look at this, but I want to get through the content so we can get the box out of the way here. So on the right side, we have our little compartment, which contains all of our accessories, all neatly packaged here. So let's pull this out. So if we pop open the end here, should be able to slide everything out. So we have our power adapter with our connector here. So this is a standard micro USB connector, no magnetic connector like we have with the Surface 3. This is a detachable cable here with our travel wall adapter, which folds out. Very nice. A very simpler, smaller design compared to the Surface Pro. Now inside we also have our paperwork, including a safety warranty guide. We also have a quick start guide that explains all the ports, the positioning of the kickstand, the buttons, and that sort of thing. And of course, we'll go through all of that in this video. Now getting back to the tablet, before you rip off this plastic, you can see that it highlights all the major features of the tablet: the power button, the volume buttons, the camera, the microphone, the charging port, USB 3.0 cable, display output, and the dock for the keyboard accessory. So we have this little tab here, so let's go ahead and flip this over. We're going to pull it. Should come off pretty neatly here. And just slide it out. There you go. All right, so my first order of business here is to boot up the tablet, and then we'll take a close look around. All right, so let's take a close look at our hardware. So once again, we have a 10.8-inch display, kind of a widescreen aspect ratio with a pretty large bezel around it. This is a full 1080p display, 1920 by 1080, good for 210 pixels per inch. It's LCD IPS, Microsoft calls it ClearType Full HD Plus display. So it's a really good looking display that is laminated to the glass, just like on the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. The brightness is about the same as the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. Looks really good. Now toward the top, we have a 3.5 megapixel front-facing camera. We also have an LED indicator to let you know when the camera is active. Of course, we also have ambient light sensors for adapting the brightness of the display and the keyboard. We also have a microphone, which is drilled through the glass here, but it does face the user, which is nice. Now, notched in the bezel of the display glass, you'll find a set of stereo speakers on either the left-hand and right-hand side, and of course, we'll demonstrate the speaker quality in this video. Now, flipping over on the back, you'll find this all-magnesium alloy chassis with this ceramic finish. Looks really sharp. It's pretty much identical to the Surface Pro 3, so really high-quality materials here for a $499 tablet. Now, on the back of the Surface 3 is this polished Microsoft logo, which replaces the Surface branding from the Surface Pro 3. It looks really nice here, and it's definitely a nice contrast to the matte finish of the magnesium alloy. Now toward the top you have a plastic trim piece which allows for radio transparency through this metal chassis. We also have our 8 megapixel rear facing camera and an LED indicator that lets you know when the camera is active. Toward the top we also have our sleep wake power button as well as our volume controls. Now along the right side of the tablet, you'll find all of your I/O ports along this angled edge to the Surface 3. None of them are labeled, so it keeps a nice clean look. So we have a mini display port, USB 3.0 port, a micro USB 2.0 port used for charging. We also have a headphone jack, and if you lift up the kickstand here, hidden under the kickstand is a micro SD card slot. Now speaking of that kickstand, if you pop it up here, you can see your Microsoft branding underneath along with your serial number information on the inside of the flap. Also at the edge of the kickstand is a foot here, which is kind of coated in a plastic or polymer, which protects whatever surface you're resting it on. Now, a very prominent feature on the bottom of all Surface tablets is this keyboard dock. So it's actually almost the entire width of the tablet. These use very strong magnets, and we do have these electrical connections for connecting directly to the keyboard. So this both powers the keyboard, makes a data connection to the keyboard, and that sort of thing. You can also see these little slots on either side, which line up with these slots or nubs on the edge of the keyboard dock. Now, like all Surface tablets, we have this kickstand built in, and we have 3 positions here. So unlike the Surface Pro 3, we do not have a lot of variability here. But again, this hinge is well designed, really rigid here, so it snaps into place and doesn't collapse when you're using it. Now, next up, I also want to unbox the Surface 3 type cover. This is an optional accessory, retails for $129.99, very similar to the Surface Pro 3 keyboard, just resized for the smaller size of the Surface 3. We still have a backlit QWERTY keyboard, mechanical, very nice keyboard, magnetically attaches to the Surface 3 and is powered by the Surface 3. So let's go ahead and pop this open. We have a little tab here along the side. Now go ahead and lift the lid here. The tablet or the keyboard is actually kind of fastened to the front cover here. I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. Lift that open, and inside we have some basic paperwork, safety warranty guide, all the standard stuff. And then we have a little instruction guide here on how to install the keyboard, which is very simple, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Now down below we have this fairly small trackpad that gives us a full mechanical click, and you have this nice palm rest, which is covered in this felt material. Now you can use this keyboard in 2 positions. If you're using this on a desktop or on a flat surface, just lay the keyboard flat. But if you want more stability, there are magnets that fasten the keyboard to the display's bezel, which stabilizes the keyboard for your lap. Now in terms of using this keyboard, it's actually very similar to using most laptop keyboards. It's still a shallow keyboard and the keys are fairly large and flush, but I find you can type pretty quickly on this. Now personally, I'm not a big fan of the trackpad. It gets the job done, but the surface is too small and the multi-touch features aren't as sensitive as I would like, such as the 2-finger scrolling. Sometimes it doesn't register that I have 2 fingers on the touchpad. The other issue I have is that the touchpad just rattles. Now that could be a production issue or a quality issue with my model, but generally speaking, every time I'm interacting with the touchpad, it rattles, which is not a really good experience. Now folding back the keyboard disables the keyboard, so you can handle it while pressing the keys on the back with no trouble. You can also see that when you fold back the keyboard, it does leave the camera exposed, so you can continue using the camera app while the keyboard cover is attached. The Surface 3 also features the same N-Treg pen technology that's available on the Surface Pro 3. So that means the Surface Pen will work the same with the Surface 3. So we have 256 levels of pressure sensitivity and palm rejection. So that means we can take handwritten notes and sketch on the display just like you would on the Surface Pro 3. So with the keyboard detached, you do get this really nice on-screen keyboard, and because the tablet is fairly wide, the width of the keyboard and landscape orientation actually means you could, in theory, just lay this flat and use it like a standard keyboard. Of course, you can't feel the keys, but if you're really proficient at touchscreen typing, this may be an option for you. Now, you have several modes here. So we have the split key mode. So that means the keys are within thumb reach, and you can actually resize this here. So you can go to medium or smaller if you want. So you have several options. And this also works in portrait orientation as well. And you do have a handwriting keyboard, so I can just start handwriting. This is a test and works great. You could also just use your finger if you want. Now taking a look at the camera app, you can launch it from the lock screen. Just swipe down. It takes you quickly to a camera app, which is kind of scaled down here in terms of its capability. So what I'm going to do here is unlock it and show you the full camera app. So I can tap anywhere on the scene, snap or photograph. Pretty basic interface. It's not the quickest in the world here. We also have panorama and video mode, so we can start recording in video. We can snap photographs while recording video. We do not have pinch in and out to zoom, but you can tap anywhere on the scene to adjust exposure and focus. Now to access additional controls, just swipe up from the bottom. So you can switch between the front-facing and rear-facing camera. As you can see, it lights up the LED to tell you that the front-facing camera is active. You can jump to your camera roll, change exposure, adjust your timer. You can also just tap your camera roll, and if you've taken multiple images here, you can actually cycle between them and select the one you want and click save. Now in terms of camera quality, pretty decent results here, especially for a tablet. 8 megapixels delivers good color reproduction and exposure. It does take a while to snap the photograph and to focus, but it finds focus pretty accurately. Now in terms of video quality, we get 1080p at 30 frames per second, and it does include continuous autofocusing, although it can be a little slow. Now it's worse in low light conditions, but in sunlight conditions, focus finds pretty quickly. Color reproduction also looks spot on, so your video looks nice and vivid. We also get good exposure, so it's able to find exposure quickly and accurately and doesn't hunt around. Now checking out the speakers, again, these have front-facing stereo speakers as opposed to the side-facing stereo speakers on the iPad Air 2, so let's go ahead and take a listen to the difference. What's going on, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the LG Watch Urbane. This is kind of a high-end Android Wear device. Right now, it's the most expensive Android Wear watch available. It's actually the same price as the entry-level Apple Watch Sport at $349. Now, in terms of Geekbench 3, around 1,000 on the single-core score and around 3,300 on the multi-core score. That's not terribly impressive if you look at something like the iPad Air 2, which scores 1810 on the single-core and 4510 on the multi-core. So in the end, the Surface 3 is perhaps the most compelling Surface tablet yet, with a more compact form factor that still gives us room for a full keyboard. And for $499, you get one of the best looking and best built tablets on the market today, while running a full version of Windows that gives us a lot of flexibility for multitasking with access to traditional desktop class apps. Performance is also much better than I expected for day-to-day operation, even with only 2 gigs of RAM in the base configuration. Windows runs quick and smoothly with no evidence of lag. Microsoft says that the Allen processor achieves 80% of the Core i3 performance in the Surface Pro 3, which is impressive for a fanless computer that gets about 10 hours of battery life. This is still a much larger and heavier tablet than something like the iPad Air 2 or the Galaxy Tab S, and the widescreen aspect ratio of it makes it a little awkward to handle. But this is much more manageable than the larger and heavier Surface Pro 3, which I think makes a better laptop than a tablet. The other issue is that we're still dealing with an operating system that basically has 2 user interfaces, one better suited for touch than the other, although much of this will be fixed with Windows 10. So ultimately, the Surface 3 is a very attractive option for Windows users looking to upgrade to a tablet with laptop capabilities. So that's going to do it for me in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.